Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're a founder or maybe a product leader, today we are tackling, well, arguably the highest leverage decision you'll make this year, selecting the right partner to build your minimum viable product, your MVP.
Yeah, this choice really does define your first year. The sources we've looked at, they distill this down to a pretty fundamental truth. You are not just buying code, you're buying speed to learning.
Right.
Get it right, and you rapidly validate the market, gather real data, get it wrong, and well, you've burned months and precious capital on something that gives you basically zero valuable signal.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to give you the framework to find that strategic guide, not just a set of coders. We've identified 7 key areas that reliably separate the strong MVP partners from the weaker ones, ensuring you avoid those really crucial, costly mistakes. A capable partner, like you said, doesn't just execute the brief. They help clarify the actual problem, scope the riskiest assumptions first, and critically, instrument the product with analytics to capture that learning.
Exactly. They help you learn faster.
Okay, let's unpack this high-leverage decision then, starting with the critical foundation.
So, first up, the foundation. Industry-specific knowledge and domain expertise. The sources really stress that fluency in your specific industry, whether it's healthcare, fintech, logistics, whatever. It prevents catastrophic rework, and it definitely shortens discovery time.
Okay, but isn't there a bit of a tension here? Like, if I'm building a pretty simple health tech MVP, does my partner really need to be a deep regulatory expert on day zero? I mean, building in all that compliance stuff sounds expensive, maybe slow.
That's probably the most common and frankly most expensive mistake the sources warn against. If you're dealing with regulated data like PHI under IPAT, protected health information,
Right.
or handling card data needing PCI compliance, that nuance, it fundamentally shapes your entire data model, your user flow, everything.
Okay.
A fluent partner anticipates this. They'll show you reference architectures, they'll ask sharp questions about specific code sets or integration protocols needed for your space.
So the real red flag isn't necessarily the price tag for compliance, it's the attitude. If they kind of wave it off and say, oh, compliance can come later, that's setting yourself up for a massive hidden cost.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because you'll have to rebuild the foundation later on. It's much more expensive.
Makes sense.
Domain knowledge basically determines whether your MVP can even legally exist and operate where you want it to. It's a core viability factor, not an add-on.
Okay. So if the partner understands the domain, then we next have to verify the how. How are they actually communicating, especially when the inevitable pivot or scope correction happens. We need really rock-solid communication standards and transparency.
Yeah, MVPs are inherently chaotic, right? They change quickly. So misunderstandings can just snowball into scope creep or missed deadlines super fast.
definitely.
You need clear governance. This usually means one primary contact, like an engagement manager or product lead. And defined working agreements, how quickly will they respond? What's the demo cadence? Weekly, bi-weekly.
And access to the backlog.
Crucial. You should prioritize partners who give you access to an open backlog. Could be Jira, Linear, whatever tool they use, so you can see work status, see blockers in real time.
And I love this simple tool mentioned in the sources, the decision register. You mentioned this isn't just about transparency, it's also about traceability, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen projects completely derailed because some critical technical decision like swapping out a database or maybe deferring a key feature it was agreed in, like a late night Slack chat, and never properly documented.
Oh, wow.
Just log it simply. What was decided, who decided it, and why. That simple documentation is infinitely cheaper than trying to untangle that technical debt months down the line.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So the ultimate red flag here is probably learning about a delay after the deadline has already passed, instead of getting a heads up about a blocker days before.
Exactly. Proactive communication is key.
Okay, moving on. How do we evaluate their project management methodologies? We want, as you said, just enough process, right?
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like when you might be pivoting every few weeks?
Yeah, you're looking for momentum without getting bogged down in bureaucratic drag.
Yeah.
The most effective pattern the sources seem to highlight is something called dual track discovery and delivery.
Dual track.
Yeah. Basically, it means one small team is constantly exploring and de-risking the future features or directions, while the main delivery team is focused on shipping the current slice of value. Usually in short, 1 to 2 week sprints with frequent demos.
I really like this concept they used. The outcome-oriented backlog? It
Mm-hmm.
sort of shifts the whole focus, doesn't it? It's
Hmm.
not just about building a list of features, it's about ticking off a list of validated learnings or testing specific hypotheses.
Exactly right. So when you're reviewing their process, you need to confirm they can actually show you how requirements evolve. How does a vague brief turn into actionable epics and then user stories? If their portfolio is just, beautiful process slides, but they have no real artifacts to show,
The slide deck
yeah,
specialists.
or if they claim everything is a priority, those are major red flags. It means they lack focus.
That leads us neatly into cost structure and pricing model evaluation. We established earlier you're buying learning per dollar, not just hours.
Hmm.
The standard models seem to be time and materials, T&M, fixed scope, or maybe a retainer hybrid model.
Hmm.
But doesn't fixing the scope really early kind of defeat the whole purpose of a learning-driven MVP? Seems risky.
It creates enormous risk, generally. Fixed scope really only works if your MVP definition is incredibly tight, and maybe your riskiest assumptions have somehow already been validated, which is rare.
Yeah.
Otherwise, T&M time and materials, it offers that necessary flexibility for pivots. But regardless of the model, you must insist that milestones are tied to testable outcomes.
So not just feature X builds.
No, it should be something like first 20 users successfully complete the critical onboarding flow, something measurable that proves value or learning.
Got it. And financial transparency feels like a must-have here.
Mm.
Requesting transparent rate cards, access to weekly, what were they called? Burn-up charts?
Yes, burn-up charts. They show progress against budget and scope over time. If the proposal is vague, uses big bulk line items with no detail, or completely forgets to mention things like analytics implementation or even basic QA in the budget,
That's a huge warning sign.
massive. Means they aren't thinking about the whole picture. Okay, now let's get into the technical side of things. The guiding philosophy for evaluating technical capabilities for an MVP has to be keep it simple to build, make it easy to change, and crucially, make it safe to discard if the market tells you it's the wrong direction.
Right, you don't want to build this massive, unchangeable thing right away. So what are the foundational must-haves for that sort of V1 stability? We hear terms like IAC and CI/CD thrown around all the time.
Yeah, the basics really start with cloud fluency, knowing their way around AWS, Azure, GCP, whichever you prefer, and using infrastructure as code, or IAC.
Explain IAC quickly.
Sure. IAC just means your infrastructure, setup servers, databases, networks, is defined and managed through code, not manual clicking. It makes things repeatable, automated, and reduces errors significantly. They should also have ready-made patterns for handling authentication and role-based access control, or RBAC. Don't reinvent the wheel there.
Okay, now here's where it gets interesting on the security side. The sources mentioned things like threat modeling, even for an MVP.
Yeah.
Isn't that overkill?
Not necessarily full-blown, but yeah, you need to map the riskiest parts. Basic secure software development lifecycle, SDLC, habits like thinking about potential threats, maybe doing some automated code scanning, they ensure the architecture can handle sensitive data correctly right from day one.
So it's foundational, especially for compliance.
Absolutely. This is key if you're aiming for things like SOC 2 compliance down the road, which is all about how you handle data security and privacy. You just need to see that security is baked in from the start, not something they plan to bolt on later.
And the technical red flags here often involve cutting corners on the infrastructure side,
Sure.
right? Like not having proper environments.
Exactly. A big one is no continuous integration, continuous deployment, or CI/CD pipeline. That means no automated testing and deployment process. Or a lack of environment parity is another huge one,
Meaning,
meaning their staging or testing environment doesn't accurately mirror the live production environment. If staging doesn't match production, your actual launch could be a nightmare because tests passed in staging might fail spectacularly for real users. You won't know if a new change will break things.
yikes. Okay, moving to quality assurance and software testing. When we're talking testing for a V1, what does a right size strategy even mean? Can't be testing everything, right? What are the absolute non-negotiables we need to ask about?
Yeah, you're right. You can't test everything. Quality in an MVP context really means confidence. Confidence that your next pivot, your next change, won't silently break the last piece of learning you just validated. So you need a mix of unit tests, maybe some API tests. But the absolute non-negotiable, according to the sources, is critical path automation. That means automated tests covering the absolute key user flows. Things like sign-in, onboarding, and whatever the single core value proposition flow is.
So we should be asking them directly, like, what does your test pyramid look like? Or maybe, which specific flows will be automated within the first couple of sprints.
Yes, exactly those kinds of questions. And they absolutely must use separate environments. Dev for development, staging for testing, and production for live users. Ideally, they should also be comfortable using feature flags to run experiments safely in production without affecting everyone.
And the red flag.
If they lack a proper staging environment, or if they say something like, oh, we'll just test manually for now, but have no concrete plan to automate those critical paths soon, that tells you they're prioritizing just getting the first version out the door over the long-term need to iterate quickly and safely.
That makes sense. It's about the marathon, not just the sprint.
Mm.
Finally, what about support and maintenance considerations?
Right.
Because the real work, the iteration based on learning, that starts after launch, right?
Totally. The launch is just the beginning. So you need clearly defined post-launch support tiers. What are the service level agreements, the SLAs? What are the response times if something breaks?
But there's more to it than just fixing bugs.
Oh, absolutely. The really crucial element here, especially if you plan to bring development in-house eventually, is knowledge transfer. This isn't optional. It must include things like architecture diagrams and notes, detailed runbooks on how to operate and troubleshoot the system, and proper handover sessions. The goal is that your internal team can eventually take ownership confidently.
Right. So if support feels like an afterthought in their proposal, or if you sense there's like a single key person who knows everything and there are no backups or documentation, you're basically setting yourself up for some serious technical debt and risk down the risk.
You got it. Single points of failure are dangerous.
Okay, wow. We've covered 7 pretty massive areas there. How do we actually put this into action quickly without getting analysis paralysis? The sources recommend a pretty surgical, like 2 to 3 week selection process.
Yeah, it needs to be fast but thorough.
So, week 1, shortlist. Give maybe 3 to 5 potential partners a focused problem statement, not a giant feature list, and ask for just a short, maybe 1 to 2 page approach note. How would they tackle this learning objective?
Right, focus on their thinking.
Week 2, the deep dive. For maybe your top 2-3 candidates, actually get in a room or on a call and whiteboard the core user flow together. Then ask them for a very specific thin slice proposal, maybe covering just authentication, one single core flow, basic analytics hooks, minimal QA, and setting up staging.
And week 3 is where the real gold often is. Reference checks and the final decision. Critically, when you call their past clients, don't just ask what went well, ask specifically what went wrong, what challenges came up, and how did this partner handle that setback.
Ah, that's smart. That tells you about their character and problem solving under pressure.
Exactly. It's far more revealing. And just a quick specific note for our North American listeners, you absolutely must confirm time zone overlap. You need reasonable overlap for demos, meetings, support windows.
Good point.
Also, get explicit confirmation of their awareness of relevant regulations. If you're in ed tech, ask about FERPA, the U.S. student privacy law. If you have Canadian users, check they understand PEPIDA. And nail down any data residency requirements right from the start. Where will user data actually live?
Super important details. Okay, before we wrap up, let's just reinforce those core warnings, the common mistakes that seem to derail MVP projects before they even get going.
Yeah, let's hammer these home.
Okay, first, avoid picking a partner based only on their hourly rate. Remember, you're buying speed to learning, and sometimes cheap ends up being very, very slow and costly in the long run.
Couldn't agree more.
Second, don't delay security or basic access controls. It's much harder and riskier to retrofit. Third, avoid the trap of overspecifying features up front. Focus instead on the hypotheses you need to test, the questions you need answered.
Keep it focused on learning.
And finally, maybe the most important, never ever ignore instrumentation. If you don't build in ways to measure the outcomes, you haven't actually learned anything from building the MVP. It's just code.
Absolutely critical. You can't learn from what you don't measure. And just to help keep your evaluation objective, avoid being swayed by a slick sales pitch or a fancy proposal. The framework suggests using a lightweight scoring matrix.
Right, like a simple scorecard.
Exactly. And maybe give the heaviest weight, say 20% each, to domain expertise and technical strength. Use those 2 categories as your main anchors to stay grounded in what really matters for a successful MVP launch. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Okay, so what does this all really boil down to for you, the listener, trying to make this choice?
I think it means choosing the best MVP partner is fundamentally a strategic selection process. You're essentially hiring a team whose primary job is to enable you to fail fast, learn faster, and do it all with minimal waste. You have to focus relentlessly on the outcomes you need to achieve, those testable results, not just the features listed on some checklist.
Yeah, that's the core message that came through loud and clear.
Yeah.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with. Insist on finding a partner who fundamentally treats the MVP not just as a smaller version of some final product, but as a dedicated path to generating signal, getting definitive validation or invalidation of your core problem and solution hypotheses. Go measure something important.